Hello, welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast, and it's the Tuesday show this week as we filmed our post-match reaction really late on Sunday, so I presume that most people would watch that on Monday, and having a Monday show be extra content will be a bit too much for people's feed, so I've pushed this back to the Tuesday show now to be extra confusing, although this should be for 1 week only. Very busy week for you, John Townley as well. How's things? How are you?
Yeah, we like it busy and we like it when Villa are winning games. I'm great, mate. What a time to be a Villa fan. 11 league wins in a row now, and we're not just beating teams, we were like putting them away, dispatching them. Good teams as well. Obviously Brighton a few weeks ago and West Ham on Sunday. So yeah, I'm doing well, thanks, mate.
Yeah, 10 goals scored in those 2 games you mentioned about. I've got a few stats later on for like the record under Emery so far in 2023, where Villa are, where Ollie Watkins is. It all makes for lovely reading, and it makes this job extra easy to do, or even more of a privilege than it is anyway, to come on here and be talking about Aston Villa victories as well. It isn't the case, but it feels like Villa are just winning every week. I know we drew to Wolves before the international break and we got battered by Newcastle and Liverpool and the European defeat and whatever else. But the general feeling is just like, especially at Villa Park, well, we win. And that's what Aston Villa are now. And that feels so good.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking forward a little bit more, you've got Luton and Fulham to come in the next few weeks. And I wrote a piece late last night or in the early hours of the morning to go out this morning about that, because yeah, the likelihood is that Villa will actually equal that record from 1983, the 13 league wins in a row. But Villa won't just beat Fulham and Luton, if that makes sense. The likelihood is they'll beat them because they've taken every game as singular in that run, if that makes sense. They haven't just shown up to games and beat the opposition. They've played a game plan in each one different as well. West Ham and Brighton are 2 completely different teams. Yeah, Villa are getting the same outcome, scoring goals, looking good defensively, and being super as a team. So coming into those Luton and Fulham games, coming up, Villa won't underestimate those teams. Yes, they've won 11 games in a row going into Luton, for example, but they're not just going to think, that'll be 12 then. Emery will have a game plan to beat Luton. Yeah. And that's why we've been on this run. It's not just because we've got good players and because we're better than the opposition. We saw it, for example, in the Everton League Cup game, he makes a couple of changes and the players step off a little bit. And that's what happens when you're not at your 100% level against any opposition that are a Premier League team. So that's, for me, the kind of important thing to remember. Yes, it's 11 wins and that says a lot, but it's also, that's a run going back, 7 months or something from March, I believe. Villa don't just win because it's Fortress Villa Park. They do it because Emery's got a game plan in every game, and they've, credit to the players, they're listening to him and then they're getting the rewards from it.
Yeah, and although there might be a bit of disrespect from the fan base and maybe from this podcast towards that Luton game as, we're at home, we should win, it should be quite easy. There won't be any disrespect from Unai Emery and the side. They'll set up knowing that every game in the Premier League is difficult.
You can't go on a game, on a run of winning 11 games, kind of overlooking any opponent. You just simply can't. Villa haven't, in that run, they haven't beaten too many top teams, should we say, because obviously we have Arsenal and Man City coming up after the game against Fulham, I think, at home in those home games, which will obviously be a big test of that winning run. But along the way, you can't, as I said, look too forward in that run. Every game is kind of Villa play it on their own merit, on its own merit. And that's why we're in such a good position, and that's why only Man City have got more points than us since the start of the year.
Yeah, which is an unbelievable record, that, isn't it? Now, when we were talking about that, and this obviously stat pops up every so often, doesn't it? Because Villa keep picking up points. But when we were talking about like the most points earned in 2023 so far, and it was March, April, May, it's like, well, it's only 4 months, it's only 5 months.
Still impressive.
October now. Yeah, it's still impressive, of course, but now it's like it's almost a full Premier League season's worth of games at this point that we're talking about, which is even more impressive. Now, I said on the post-match show that we filmed on Sunday that I was slightly wary of West Ham, actually, despite, I don't know whether anyone predicted 4-1 or not. Like, surely no one does that. But I was quite wary of West Ham because of the physicality, and that may be a problem for someone like Pau Torres that we've seen before, and that West Ham can set up in a certain way as they did against Brighton, and maybe they could come and do a job on us, and that's how I felt before the game, despite that prediction. But that wasn't the case at all, was it? West Ham threatened in dribs and drabs, but not really. Villa were the dominant side throughout and thoroughly deserving of their 3 points.
Exactly. That's when it comes to respecting your opponent and looking at how you can attack them, but also how you can, mitigate their threats. And Emery said in an interview after the game that he said something along the lines of the consequence of defending well is to then score goals. As in, if Villa defend well, they'll score goals. And he means that because of how Villa play, in terms of if they defend well, then they can build up with the ball and control the match. Therefore, there's going to be more chances. And I'm not privy to how West Ham sort of built up for this game and how they prepared for it. Sorry, but I just felt like Villa were more aware of West Ham's threat and how they could combat them. And then Ollie Watkins and Moussa Diaby, you don't have to kind of tell them what to do. As soon as they enter the final third, they have that link up, and they're two quality players, and I think that was actually the difference on the day. West Ham didn't have that quality in the final third. Their goal was very jammy, wasn't it, really? Antonio didn't have a great game. But Villa had Ollie Watkins, who's going to score near enough to 20 goals this season, I think, if not more. And they have Moussa Diaby, who I thought was excellent as well, by the way, although he didn't get a goal, or did he get an assist? I'm not too sure that he did. But he was still running the channel, still always a nuisance. And yes, Antonio gives you that in some way, but Villa were well prepared for that. They were prepared for Bowen's threat. They were prepared for Antonio and Paqueta as well, who's an outstanding player, by the way. So yeah, I think again it's credit to how Villa set up for the game, and there will never be a game under Emery's tenure where we'll be sitting there and thinking, oh well, we didn't prepare for that one well, or we do you know what I mean? Whereas I think if you look at the West Ham side of it, I don't think they were quite ready for what we were going to give them. I think they were more concerned about, kind of what can we do from set pieces? How can we get Antonio, onto Torres, for example, without actually thinking, well, how we can defend what Villa have got. Whereas Emery looks at the whole picture and, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's so experienced, and that's how Villa are turning over teams at the moment.
Me and Matt did a segment on the post-match show yesterday or Sunday of like the unsung man of the match. Now you'll have like Douglas Luiz and Ollie Watkins be the obvious picks for man of the match because they've scored goals. Now, a way to talk about different players that maybe won't get the recognition is having this little segment of unsung man of the match, somebody that you liked what they did or what they contributed, but maybe don't get the plaudits. Is there anyone that stands out to you?
In a game like that, similarly to the game against Brighton, every player has played at at least 8 out of 10. So, and it's a big team effort. So you could literally go through like Matty Cash, Dean, John McGinn played well, Diaby played, like everyone played well. But I just thought, and everyone's probably saying the same thing, but Ezri Konsa he was just faultless again. You're kind of running out of ways to say it now, and we've been, Villa fans at least, have been saying it for months and months, even years really. Obviously, he, like Mings, like other players, struggled a little bit when Villa had that bad run of form under Dean Smith, and then a little bit under Steven Gerrard as well, of course. But Konsa he's so good. Like he's a Rolls Royce. He doesn't always have to pick out a pass to Ollie Watkins down the channel like Pau Torres might, is in terms of that kind of a progressive pass, but he's always so safe with his passes. He keeps the ball well. Yesterday, I think he had 96% passing accuracy. So on the ball, he can do it all. In terms of playing that role with Torres, he doesn't have to do what Torres does because Torres does it so well. But defensively, there's never a moment of worry or panic, and we knew this when he was playing very well in the 2020 to 21 season, his second campaign at Villa. We noticed that, he'd back off and then he'd just slowly ease the attacker out of the way and win possession back for Villa as if it was, you made it look so easy. And now he's doing it without us even, having to praise him afterwards, but he does it so often. And again, yesterday, that was a really difficult task. Marshalling Antonio, the other threats that West Ham have, it's a big, powerful team. Brighton, in a very different way, they have a lot of tricky players who can dribble with the ball, beat players, and work patterns of play. So Konsa is overcoming every task and every challenge that's kind of put his way. Against Newcastle, he made a silly error, but every top player makes errors, don't they? And it's how you respond. He's responded as well as you could possibly wish for, and yeah, he's just a remarkable player. And people say, he's probably England's best centre back, and I don't know if he's better than John Stones, but are there any better English centre-backs than Ezri Konsa right now, but I can't think of one that's better than him. Harry Maguire isn't.
I can interrupt you there. As much as we can debate how good he is as an English defender, I think he's one of the best centre-halves in the Premier League.
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends how many you want to kind of put in the category, but he's up there as, you know, Villa are a great team and he's one of our best players and certainly our best centre-back. I say certainly our best centre-back. He's different to Torres, but he's so important. And yeah, that's why I'm putting him kind of on that, you know, on that sort of periphery with John Stones. And therefore, yeah, you're right, Dan, he would be one of the best centre-backs in the league. And you just hope that his form will continue. And there's no reason why to suggest it wouldn't, because he's not just, you know, played 10 good games. And before that, there was question marks. For years now, Villa know that he's an excellent centre-back. He's at a great age as well to improve. Just everything's so effortlessly. And yeah, tremendous footballer, and he's adding that leadership quality to his game as well. Now that Mings is out for at least, you know, most of this season, potentially the whole campaign. So yeah, again, just against West Ham, excellent. You could go across the whole sort of team, but Konsa he stands out by not standing out, if that makes sense. Because as a centre back, you don't want to be seen doing anything, you know, risky on the ball or anything like that. But defensively, he's just a fantastic player. In terms of him being maybe underappreciated or underrated, I don't think Villa fans underrated him or underappreciated him. But I also think with Mings next to him, Mings, again, in his own right, is an excellent player. And I think because he was so, you know, quite aggressive, he's big, he's left-footed, he's quite noticeable on the pitch, if that makes sense. You automatically kind of think, oh, well, not that Mings carrying Konsa at all, because that certainly wasn't the case. But you tend to kind of put the praise on Mings potentially. I don't know when Mings would probably be the first person to say that. Yeah, I wouldn't want to play with any other centre back than Ezri Konsa. You know, as my partner, and that showed at the back end of last season when Villa kept keeping clean sheets, and defensively they were brilliant. The line that they played as well, in Konsa and Mings had that on lock, didn't they? And the rest of the defence, Cash, Ashley Young, and Moreno, Luca Dane, they all had a really good understanding of each other's games. And again, I think that's testament to Konsa as well, because he has that ability to communicate, and how he reads the games. Is so important. And it was interesting. Obviously, Dean Smith was there yesterday as well. He signed Konsa. He signed Ollie Watkins, Matty Cash, Emi Martinez was signed under Smith, as was Douglas Luiz. I think 5 of the 11 were all Dean Smith players. So it was nice that he was there. I hope he feels pride that he was the one who laid those foundations, really.
Another brilliant player that we've spoken about a lot recently, for obvious reasons, is Ollie Watkins. Again, funny that, I don't know what episode it was, but it was a Monday show a few weeks ago, probably a couple of months ago now, where we said where he hadn't scored yet in the Premier League, that if he doesn't score this weekend, that's it. We're not talking about him again because we're sick of it. Since then, he's been on unbelievable form, really. There's a stat from Who Scored that I picked out earlier. There's a list of players here that have scored 5 or more goals and assisted 5 or more goals in the Premier League this season. Ollie Watkins, and that's the end of the list. So Watkins to be goal scorer and provider at the same time, in a season where you would probably say he's not really got going yet. You know, the most of those goals scored, at least, have only come in the last handful of games. So he had that period at the start of the season where he hadn't scored. So to feel like Ollie Watkins is only just warming up to this season is quite a frightening prospect, really. Yeah,
we told you so sort of thing to the people who don't rate Watkins. I don't understand it. You know, I respect everyone's opinion, but he went 5 games without scoring at the start of the season, granted, but he's so involved in the build-up, and Villa was free scoring themselves anyway, and that's shown now, as you said, Dan. He's got 5 assists, double figures for goal involvement, top centre forward. No centre forward, no 2 centre forwards are the same, and Watkins might frustrate because he probably should have scored against Areola in the first kind of 15 minutes of the game. I think it was. He took an excellent touch from Diaby's pass and then skewed his shot wide. But that's Watkins. He never gets 2 down now, at least under Emery, and he'll always look for the next chance because he knows that they're going to arrive. And if he scores a goal a game, or if that's his target, he's not going to score every game. But if his target is to score in every game, he's going to get 20 goals a season because he's always going to get chances. And look at how well he took his opportunity when it came. And again, it was at such a crucial point in the game. It reminded me a little bit of the game at Burnley when Diaby scored to make it 3-1. Burnley were pushing for an equaliser. Villa on the back foot. West Ham on Sunday, exactly the same thing. Ward-Prowse swinging in corners, Villa having to deal with a lot of pressure, and Watkins comes up with a moment of class. Again, great ball from McGinn, and yes, he was in the box, but he had a lot of work to do there, didn't he? He didn't have to beat Zuma to get his shot off. He just needed an angle, and then he wraps it into the top corner. So, top class centre forward play, and it's not just the goals that he's scoring or the assists he's getting. He's tireless. He's such a problem for defences. And I was saying to my dad actually yesterday that if you put yourself in the kind of the opposition shoes, you don't want to be playing Ollie Watkins, Moussa Diaby, John McGinn running around, Luca Dean basically playing as a left wing, putting in crosses. Luca Dean's had more crosses into the box than any player in the Premier League, the third most in Europe's top 5 leagues this season. So there's threats from all angles. And then you're thinking, well, Villa must be quite open then if they're so gung-ho on the counter-attack and things like that. But actually, no, they're not. They're so well drilled as well. So they pick the moments to attack the Villa, and they're scoring goals. So at the moment, it's kind of what can go wrong. But on Ollie Watkins, he's had a fantastic month, hasn't he? England call up, England goal, new contract. Goals, Luton, Fulham coming up, Forest away. More opportunities there for him to get amongst the goals. Yeah,
it's really exciting, isn't it? You certainly back him to be getting 20 goals in the Premier League. I think this year, the way things are going, if Villa can continue their good form, and Watkins obviously stays injury free, and the obvious caveats with it's a long season, but I think you backed him, didn't you, for 20 Premier League goals at the start of the season in the preview, which is genuinely a possibility. However, again, obviously I predicted Villa to get top 4, didn't I, in the summer, in our end of season show, and got laughed at by some of the room. And if I'd have known back then that top 5 is a Champions League spot, I probably just would have said Villa will get into the Champions League, meaning 5th place, basically. I know it's only 9 games still, but it does feel like it's possible the way that we've started so far. Why aren't we allowed to get carried away from time to time? I know Emery says, we always dream, and my dream's to win the Champions League and all these different things. And I actually want to talk about managerial stuff in a later section, so we'll come back to that. But it feels like Villa are on the verge of something. It's probably an easier way of saying it, whether that's just a trophy or a top 6 finish or whatever it is. It feels like a great time to be an Aston Villa fan at the moment, and I know I'm not the only one that feels like that. Whether you agree that it's top 4 or top 7 or whatever, we're all in this kind of wave of euphoria or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting actually, because we usually say, don't we, that Villa don't get the credit they deserve from certain sections of the media, and but we don't care, but why are we talking about it then? But kind of after every week now at Villa, because we've won the last 11 games, after every passing week, and it's the same for West Ham, more reporters that aren't usually at Villa Park will say wow, kind of didn't expect it, but as in from the reporters' view, it's not that they didn't expect Villa to win or anything, but it's the manner in which they're blowing teams away. And it's, because we've won 11 games in a row, we don't want to say we expect to win games, but, could Villa beat West Ham? Yes, they could. But I think people coming to games, they're watching Douglas Luiz play other midfielders off the park. They're watching Ollie Watkins run relentlessly at the top of the pitch. They're watching Diaby move into space and all these different things. Pau Torres kind of pulling the strings from centre-back. And then they're probably thinking, well, I've been to Newcastle early this season. I've been to Newcastle last season. I've been to West Ham when they were so good a few years ago. But I'm coming to Villa and I'm seeing the same things. I'm seeing the same signs. This club and this team can really push on and make something of this season. And I think there is a bit of a change in terms of that kind of, I don't know, at the start of the season when Villa were doing okay, it was like they're doing right, but Europe's here and, let's just see how they go. But even in the last couple of weeks, there seems to be a shift in my opinion of, can they get Champions League? And just off a couple of results, I think that can do a lot for how Villa are perceived by different people. And as I say, the game's coming up. Villa should be in the top 4 come the November international break. You don't win 11 games in a row by underestimating anybody, and Villa won't underestimate Fulham or Forest. Fulham or Luton. Forest away will be a difficult game, but a game which Villa will feel that they can win. You're not going to win every game this season, but if you win those 3, or if you can collect, say 7 points, win your 2 home games, draw against Forest, maybe you're going to be in the top 4. So that's a really good position for Villa to be in, going into games against City and Arsenal. And yesterday, Emery was even asked about a title charge, which I thought was remarkable. I think that was pushing it. No, sorry, I do think that's pushing it. Yeah, I don't know when the last time Villa manager was asked in the press room about going for a league title, but yeah, Christ, I didn't expect that. I kind of looked over my shoulder like, let's count down. We go from 0 to 100 really quickly. I actually joked about it on the post-match show that Villa were 2 points off top spot yesterday. Like, how far can Villa go? Is it a push for the title? As an obvious tongue-in-cheek that, we're certainly not title challengers at all. But if we'd have beaten Wolves,
we'll be joint top now. I know every team will have those things. If you've done this, if you've done that, but yeah, it's mad, really, isn't it? That we could be that close at this point in. I think probably the last time somebody was asked about winning the title was possibly the lockdown season when when Villa and Everton were top after like 3 or 4 games. Possibly then, it's not like I can think of Villa being top, but I know 9 games is still fairly small. But people say like, "Oh, don't look at the table till 10 games." Well, we're almost there, and 9 games is a quarter of the season, isn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah,
so it's obviously still too early for that, but where we are at the moment, this isn't 3 or 4 games played, and Villa have got 12 points out of 15. This is 19 points out of whatever it is, and that's a really, really good return. And given that Man City have dropped a couple of points and Spurs look better, Arsenal have dropped a couple of points, Villa to be where they are at this point in the season, the end of October, and 2 points off the top is unbelievable.
Yeah, and when you contextualise it with the Alex Moreno, Jacob Ramsey setbacks, Tyrone Mings, and when they're not even being available, Villa have gone to Liverpool, they've gone to Newcastle. Granted, they've lost those games, but they've beaten Brighton, they've beaten West Ham, scored 17 goals in 4 home games. It's been a crazy start to the season, really. And if you said all of those things, you'd say, "Oh, where are Villa?" And then you look at the table, and it's 2 points off top at the moment. Yeah, Spurs play tonight, but say 3 points. Then I tend to look at. It's interesting the kind of where do you look at the at what point of the season do you look at the table before you kind of take it as as face value. And I always do it after the first 19 games, the first kind of. Everyone's played each other once. Yeah, and I think that takes you up to around, is that like Boxing Day-ish?
Boxing Day, Christmas, yeah.
Time. Yeah, around there. I think that's when you can take stock and really look at where you are. Yes, we have Europe, but Emery's already stated that this is the priority this season in terms of league football. And yes, he's determined to win that Europa Conference League. But I think, and this is what I said a few weeks ago, if Villa get into those latter rounds of the competition, then there will naturally be a focus on that then. But I think for now, Emery's kind of, let's get through, let's beat these teams, almost on the back burner, because every game he takes is a single, as I said earlier. But, let's go to Alkmaar, as we'll touch on later, and let's try and win. If we don't, we'll draw, and hopefully then get through, win those games. And then, I don't know, say March, for example, when we're a few points away from top 4 or top 5, and we're in the semi-final or quarter-final of the Conference League, that's when it's really going to get kind of into the nitty and gritty of what are the priorities exactly and how are we going to manage it. And that's going to define Villa's season. I think up until February, March time, Villa just need to chip away at these games, and let's see where they are. As I say, over the next 3 league games, you'd expect Villa to probably be in the top 4. And then you've got City and Arsenal as, I don't want to say 3 hits, because, who knows what Villa can achieve this season, but you're not going into those games kind of worrying about slipping down the league table or being this many points off this team. If you look at the table now, we're already got a decent gap from kind of out of 7th place, and nice at the start of the season. If Villa can just get European football this term, I think that would be a success, as long as they win the Conference League. So I do think Europa League, that is important as kind of a next step. The doomsday outcome would be Villa not being in Europe at all next season, which at the moment doesn't seem likely. But we're 9 games in, and we've won 1 and lost 1 of our opening 2 group stage matches. So there's a long way to go yet. And
there'll be some element of Villa fans that saying that we're getting carried away, and neutral fans certainly will think Villa are getting carried away after only 9 games. But I think the positive feeling comes, from me at least anyway, that the back end of last season was also very good. The whole of 2023 largely has been very good under Unai Emery because of the points total that we've seen. I keep referring to it, so I might as well just read it now. In 2023, only Man City with 74 and Arsenal with 62 have amassed as many Premier League points as Villa, also 62 in 2023. So if 2023 was a season, we'd be 3rd, joint 2nd with Arsenal. So I think, people will say it's only 9 games, like there's a long way to go, and that's absolutely true for this season. But the calendar year for Villa has been very good, and the way we got into Europe last year has kept like the mood at Villa keeps rising. So we feel like, forget like the summer break when nothing happened. Villa have been good consistently for a long time now. So it isn't just 9 games to us. But I do get that talking about top 4 semi-finals of the Conference League and the title is going to get some accusations of, they're getting carried away. But the general feeling is Villa are very good now.
And all those things will be decided, not the title, that's, rubbish, but top 4, top 5 even, and Conference League final potentially, that will be decided later in the season. It's just about being in the best position possible to reach those targets. And Emery literally views every game as one step, and that's why talking after 9 games of the season, Villa could actually be like, I don't know, the point you make there then about Villa fans aren't excited because we're 2 points off the top. I'm not excited about that at all. I don't really care where we are in the league at the moment. It's that we've kind of picked up from where we left off last season, and that's the thing that I think a lot of fans will be happy with, especially after losing to like Newcastle 5-1. So yeah, a lot to be positive about, but yeah, we need to kind of just temper those expectations a little bit and just see where we are. I think come the turn of the year, and then let's see where we can go from there. I wrote something this morning actually about Villa. I actually think we'll probably just improve from here, which is quite remarkable. I think outsiders would take that as like, oh, shut up, you trying to ride on the crest of a wave. But Pau Torres has only played 9 Premier League games. Diaby's only played 9 Premier League games. Those players will continue to improve. Douglas Luiz is showing no sign of kind of letting off in his development. Same as Ollie Watkins. These players are getting better. It feels like the longer you work with Emery, especially for this group of players, they're improving still. And as I say, last season, I didn't think that we'd be able to thrash these teams. I think beating them would be a positive thing, but we're actually putting them to bed, quite convincingly. And that's something that if Newcastle were doing that to us, Brighton and West Ham, for example, I'd really take notice and think, well, they'll be in the top 4 again this season. So I think we need to kind of give credit to ourselves as well and think, well, we're that team now. So yeah, really exciting.
Just a couple of individuals I want to mention before we took a look at like a wider look of Unai Emery. Nicolo Zaniolo had a very difficult international break, I guess we could say. I thought it was a good show of faith by him and the scenario by Unai Emery to start him on Sunday against West Ham and kind of prove a point, for want of a better phrase. What did you make of his performance? Because we didn't really touch on him on Sunday's game, on Sunday's video at all.
Yeah, again, encouraging. I've kind of saying it most weeks now about Zaniolo. I think his final product needs a bit of improvement, but ultimately, I think he's a player that's making an impact for Villa. That's what he was signed to do. He's a loan signing. Yes, Villa can sign him permanently if certain things are met, should we say. He played a part for the first goal, which was obviously an important, opening in the game. And, he drives with the ball well, he links play well. But I think sometimes his final product, maybe the final decision isn't quite there. But if it was, then I don't think Villa would be getting him on loan from Galatasaray. So, he's what I expected, really. I think a solid player and a good addition.
Yeah, I thought he did well for the goal. That was something that we didn't mention. The stats phrase that go around is the pre-assist, isn't it? He doesn't get the assist because Watkins plays it to Douglas Luiz, but Zaniolo does well in the first place to even get it back to Watkins. So, fair play to him given the circumstances to come in and have a pretty decent performance all round, I thought. And if the off-the-field stuff kind of goes away and he's cleared of any wrongdoing and he can just focus on his football, I think he can be a dangerous asset for Villa moving forward. And I'll say what I've said before, whether I was told I was being harsh or not. When he does contribute a goal of his own, I do think he will kind of step up another level with that confidence. And there's just something in him waiting to be unlocked, and we've not quite seen that yet. The second part I wanted to mention, and we'll gloss over this very briefly because we've spoken about it off air and there isn't really anything to report, but we've been asked questions about it. So I'm kind of just doing my duty of the audience watching to get this on air. John Duran is somebody that I was asked questions of after Sunday's post-match show, saying, where was he? Why was he not on the bench? Have we heard anything? Is he injured? Has he had a falling out with Unai Emery? And since his Instagram has been wiped of any mention of Aston Villa, no Aston Villa photos, he's got a couple of Colombia match pictures on his pinned profile or whatever, no reference of him being an Aston Villa footballer anywhere. And that kind of tends to lead people to go, there's a problem here. He's clearly unhappy. Player deletes social media. That's a story these days. First thing I'll say is I don't think the social media thing is important. I don't think there's anything in that, really. That's my personal take on it. The second is that Emery wasn't asked about John Duran, so we don't have any facts to report. So we can't say for sure whether there has been any falling out or whether there hasn't. And that if we can find out any information on this, in the coming days or whatever, that's your job to do that. But as of right now, we don't really know anything.
Yeah, I've asked around, so hopefully we get an answer before Wednesday. But if not, there's a press conference head of AZ that Emery will do in the Netherlands, and obviously Duran will be asked about then. So yeah, we don't know if there's an issue or if he's just injured, or I'm not sure. Obviously, he's come back from international duty. I think he played, I know he played at least once for Colombia. He might have played twice. So yeah, we'll get an update this week on that.
I feel like I'm kind of like sidestepping the issue by not really saying anything, but because we've been asked about it, I can't just say, oh, let's just not talk about it because we don't know. Like, I'm going to be honest and say, yeah, we don't know, but if we can find out, we will. If Before we jump into the rest of the show, I just want to share with you a brand new publication from Reach PLC celebrating and covering everything that is women's football. It's a monthly magazine of wall-to-wall women's football, including our very own Aston Villa women's team, of course. If you want to know more or grab yourselves a copy, head to birminghamlive.co.uk and order yours today.
Whether it's the legendary Lionesses, grassroots or expert analysis of the women's leagues, Women's Football News has it all covered. A brand new monthly magazine packed with news, interviews and expert opinion. Don't miss Women's Football News. Pick up a copy today from participating retailers. Women's football is here to stay, and so are we.
So for those watching on YouTube, I've changed the background. So we've got the Europa Conference League logo there rather than the Premier League one, because we're going to talk about AZ Alkmaar a little bit now. Obviously, that's Thursday's game away from home, which on paper looks like one of the most difficult games Villa will play in the group. Legia Warsaw away was also another difficult one, and we didn't fare too well there, did we? So there's probably two kind of parts of the conversation we're going to go down here, and that's team selection and kind of how important the game is. So let's do team selection first. How strong do you go here if you're Unai Emery?
I'll go full strength. I think
okay, and now we move on.
I think it's a really important game. I'd say it's certainly a game that Villa must not lose. I don't think it's a must win, because I think if Villa draw the game, you play AZ at home, you play Legia at home still. You can win both of those games, and a trip to Mostar, a game that Villa should win as well. But we know how these things work, and AZ will be a really difficult game. I do believe it. They've won 8 of their first 9 games in the league. They've drawn once, so they're unbeaten. They've only conceded 4 goals, I think, in 9 games, which is quite remarkable. Yes, it's the Eredivisie, but Legia Warsaw play in I don't know how to pronounce the Polish table, the Polish division, sorry. I just think it's going to be a very difficult game. And West Ham went there last season. At us
going, well, they play in the Premier League. Villa will be a difficult side.
That, I think, is an advantage for them in terms of having that mentality of this is our biggest game of the season. Maybe not biggest game of the season, because they're
like a scalp.
They're playing for their second at the moment. They beat Ajax away a couple of weeks ago, although everyone beats Ajax these days. They're second bottom, I think. But it will be a really difficult game. I'm not expecting anything other than trouble in terms of trouble. That sounds a bit dramatic. Problems not off the pitch. On the pitch, Villa, they're going to have to suffer in parts of the game. They're going to have to take the chances when they come, because I don't think Villa are just going to turn up and dominate at all against Legia. You would have thought Villa dictate the game, have 70% possession, and it did not work out like that at all. So I think it'll be really difficult. And again, it depends on the context of the match, but I would take a point right now.
Well, I think a few weeks ago we spoke about like the priorities of the Conference League or the Premier League, and I was like, well, it was after the Carabao Cup, wasn't it? The Everton exit, how we prioritise the different competitions, and I was like, well, the cups are important because you either win or you're out, kind of thing, and that's slightly different for the Conference League, because obviously the first part is a group, so if you lose, it isn't the end of the world because you can claw it back. But if you keep losing, it will be the end of the world. But because now we're ticking along nicely in the Premier League, I'm kind of thinking, well, if we go full strength on Thursday and lose to Luton, for example, God forbid, that's pretty rubbish, isn't it? But then I suppose you would still think, well, we've got 28 games left in the Premier League, and beating Alkmaar is vastly important to the group. So, yeah, I'm not sure how I look at it as an overall, but I'm probably blinded by bias. I think we're probably good enough to win both games regardless. So does it really matter how we do it?
I think if you're taking games by couples and you take AZ and Luton, and then you take a trip to Mostar, and I think it might be either Man City or Arsenal potentially in that week, which one's the harder? I just think if you go full strength against AZ, you avoid defeat, should we say, and then you play Luton at the weekend.
You could afford to rotate against Luton, possibly.
I don't think you have to rotate either. Genuinely, I don't like the whole players can't play. We don't play then for another week, so they can rest for a few days and then gear up for Forest away the next weekend. So I just think play your full strength against AZ, get out of there with a result, a win or a draw. I think is, obviously would prefer a win. I think if you win the game, you're in a really good position then to qualify topping the group. And if you draw, you're basically avoiding a bit of a nightmare situation where you have to win all of your remaining games, which again Villa are capable of doing. But I don't want to go into the last game away against Mostar having to rely on a different result, should we say. You want it to be in your own hands. And I said before, topping the group is really important because you don't want to be playing that qualifier, that kind of knockout qualifier that you have to play in like February or something. And I'll take it if we lose against AZ, but while we have the power in our own hands to kind of shape our own destiny in the group, let's just go full strength against AZ. We are capable of beating Luton with Yuri Tielemans playing, or I don't know, Matty Cash comes out and Conte plays right back, Carlos comes in. Luton are by far the underdogs in that game, and they'll be banged up for it because it's a scalp. Some of those players won't have played at Villa Park before, and it'll be a brilliant experience for them. But I think if you look at the results that they have got so far this season, you have to question the opposition though, because Forest are 2-0 up against them, and both goals that they conceded to Luton were shocking from a defensive point of view. Like genuinely, Luton, credit to them, they don't stop and they won't stop because their journey to get to the Premier League is remarkable, and those players are kind of living the dream really. So fair play to them, but they shouldn't come to Villa Park and get anything from the game as long as Villa put in their own effort. And I'm certain that Villa will do that because, as I say before, Emery plans for every game in isolation. But yeah, full strength against AZ, full strength against Luton, unless you have to make a couple of changes here and there, and then you've got a whole week to prepare for Forest.
So you're going to, my knowledge there, is it Netherlands?
Include this.
No. I edited it, so I don't have to include it. I probably have to include that now because the next clip is going to have us laughing, so I'm probably going to have to leave it in. So you're going to the Netherlands. Of course, we all know where AZ Alkmaar is. You're going there this week. Obviously, this question is dependent by if you knew the result. So let's say we play a rotated side, Olsen plays, Dendoncker, Duran, etc. Now, if Villa win the game, obviously it doesn't matter, you'd be happy. But if you're there in the Netherlands, as we all know, and that team news comes out at 3:30, 4:30, whenever it is, and it is that heavily rotated side, what would you be thinking?
That we're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
As we did against Legia, we were asking for problems and we got them. So I mean, it's crazy because I'm just me, and Unai Emery is four-time Europa League winner. So ultimately, I'm not going to I have questioned. Ultimately, I'm not going to say to him in the press conference like, "Oh, why did you do that?" Or I mean, you should, because if
we lost the game, I think that's a fair question. But if we win the game with a rotated side, then you go, "Well, that's fine."
Yeah, what it comes down to is that Emery trusts the players in his squad, and he always says after wins, like for example, the win over West Ham, he said we need every player learning this system. But the issue is that some of them are learning on the job, and learning on the job away against Alkmaar, I think, is just asking for problems, whereas a full strength 11 won't have those issues. And say if we go 2-0 up, then can Tielemans come on and kind of try and get used to it that way. And I think it was a good idea to bring him on against West Ham because they're a big team, a physical team, and they were still pushing when we were 3-1 up. So him having that experience, I think, helps. So yeah, for me, full strength. And if I do see a kind of 3-4 changes, then yes, we can still win the game. Of course we can, because we're a good squad. We have a good squad, but I think that would only get into AZ's hands.
Right, let's go back to the Premier League then, or 2023 as a whole, really, or the last year of Unai Emery. He was, as I've just quickly checked on Google, appointed exactly 1 year today as this podcast goes out on Tuesday, the 24th of October, appointed as Aston Villa head coach then. I think his first game in charge was the 1st of November, off the top of my head, against Man United, certainly in November anyway, if it wasn't the 1st. What a year it's been, John. I'm not asking you to reminisce on your best result or your favourite moment and things like that on the spot, unless you can think of them. That'd be lovely. But just how good we've been and how good we've been so far this season. We've alluded to it a few times with the record in 2023. Another stat I saw before we came on was most goals scored in the Premier League this season. Newcastle 24, Villa 23 and Brighton 22. And the tweet that I saw that from, I've copied and pasted it, so I don't know who it is from, but they said it was like a brand account. Who would have expected that top three? I was thinking, well, I expected Villa to be up there as one of the most... it was one of the sides that scores the most goals. People think Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal, but three sides there are sides that have been kind of knocking on the door of upsetting the establishment, haven't they? With Newcastle getting Champions League, Brighton Europa League and us Conference League, and wanting to have aspirations to be better than that and do more and win trophies and whatever. It's three very good sides there, and Emery's a massive part of us even being in that conversation. We spoke about the Villa Park record, the only clubs in Europe's top 5 leagues currently on longer winning runs at home than Emery's Villa, Man City with 14 and Atletico Madrid with 13. Just talk to me and summarise as best you can the job that Emery's done. As we've kind of said, haven't we, a few times, it's not even been quite a year yet. As this comes out, it is now officially 1 year. It's just an unbelievable job. I don't know how many times I can say it, but I can't quite get my head around where we were a year ago when Steven Gerrard was thinking about to where we are now under Emery.
Yeah, Emery was obviously asked about it in his press conference. It was his pre-match presser that he was asked about it, and he said that it's gone really fast, and I agree. It has gone really fast, and I think that's because of the success that he's had. Success in terms of, because I'll say this straight away, for this period to count, in Villa's history, we need to win silverware, and we need to mark it tangibly. And qualifying for Champions League for some people won't be that, because we do need to win a trophy. And I'm kind of in the camp of, just kind of win a League Cup if you need to, just to mark it. But what he has achieved is I don't want to say it's like united a fan base sort of thing, but he's brought everyone together in terms of we're all now know how Aston Villa have and are going to progress as a football club. Whereas previously, I think there was always questions over, does this striker need to be sold? Do we need to bring a new striker in? What happens to this midfielder? Even before that, it was like, how do we get the best out of Grealish? We're too reliant on him. What's this with the manager? Do we have the right scouts? All of this stuff. When Emery's just strolled into the football club and he's brought some of his pals with him, and the transformation's just been incredible. I mean, in my lifetime, I'm only 23, but I'm sure in a lot of other people's lifetime as well, they probably don't remember a Villa manager, not for a long time anyway, that they are so confident in that they can and will deliver success. I have absolutely no doubt that Emery can win silverware with Villa. He says his dreams about winning trophies and qualifying for the Champions League. He genuinely means that, and I've absolutely no reason to doubt it. And that's incredible coming from myself as a Villa fan. I've never seen Villa win a trophy. I've never seen Villa really compete as well as they are now. Yes, there was those Martin O'Neill years. In a weird way,
no, even that was different, wasn't it?
It was different because I feel like, and this isn't any discredit at all, but Villa had a very good squad, a squad that was capable of getting the top four, probably should have, and they were one of the top 6 teams in the division. Whereas I feel like in the Premier League nowadays, there's so many good teams. That West Ham team is top quality. Villa's team, play for player, I wouldn't change it. I'd keep this Villa team together, but it's very tight, and we're blowing them away 4-1. You've got Newcastle now. Some clubs are backed by states. It's so competitive, and here we are. And we are all confident that we can get top 4, top 5. And that's just remarkable considering the depth of opposition that we're facing. You've got Man United, Chelsea, Tottenham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Man City, Newcastle. West Ham are good. Brighton are excellent in their own right. Brentford are a very difficult team to play. Palace have been in the division for years. And we got promoted, 4 or 5 years ago. The ascent that we've been on is remarkable. And I hear people say, but Villa spent this amount of money. And firstly, we had to spend the amount of money that we did in the first year to try and be competitive. We lost all of our players out on loan. We then have to sell Grealish, because of a release clause, and building from that is never easy. And we bought 3 players who, one of which is already gone, 2 of which didn't play together. And Emery, that isn't an issue anymore because he's playing Bailey in the right way. Buendia had an injury, but last season he played so many games. It's like every issue or kind of question mark that we had before Emery's arrival, he's kind of just rubbed out with his rubber, and it's not an issue anymore. On that list of things, there's so many positives now, and it's just so exciting, and you really feel like Villa are like they're more than back. I haven't experienced this Villa before, put it that way. I haven't had this enthusiasm. Last year, you were thinking, which manager's going to finally break into that top 10? That was only a year ago. We're so far past that now. And we're 5 years into the ownership of Nassef Sawiris and Wes Edens. Their backing has been fantastic, of course. They're building infrastructure and not just buying players for from the pitch. They're acquiring different stakes in clubs as well. So it's just so exciting, and Emery leading the way for the senior team as well. The women's team, obviously, last season doing really well. The season hasn't started so much. It's good, but in terms of Emery, he's everything that you want in a manager. And just as a side note as well, with the way he carries himself, something that probably gets underrated within other circles, not for Villa fans, he'll say hello, good evening, and good afternoon, etc. in press conferences all the time. He's always so polite. When I was out in the States as well, covering the club, he was so open and really warm, as were the rest of his team. Damian, Vidigani, Monchi, all those guys, they are the perfect band of people that you want driving this club forward, and they're doing it as well. We're heading into a really exciting era.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer, and one that will certainly be clipped up on social media because that's made my job easy. A really good answer.
You can crack on for like 30 minutes talking about more stuff, and obviously we don't have that time, but it's just, do you know what I mean? It's so, you can feel it, and every fan, I feel like every fan would want to send in like a 30-minute video of like, here's what I think about Emery, and you could probably make like a 5-hour movie about it, Dan. But anyway.
You've mentioned a couple of things there that I want to kind of dissect and speak about as well. The comparison with the O'Neill era, I think, is very interesting because you mentioned earlier about like for this period of success to actually mean anything to the history books is they'll have to win something, because this moment of winning 11 games at home, or Ollie Watkins scoring 5 and 5, or Douglas Luiz scoring in consecutive home games or whatever, well, looks nice as a record and will be spoken about by the player in the future that attempts to beat it. But if Villa don't win anything and Emery's sacked in a year and a half, God forbid, because he doesn't do anything, it'll just like, well, it was a good time. But, if you look at Villa, it won't really be remembered. Comparing that to the O'Neill days, which is the generation that we remember as the last bit of success, on paper, Emery's not even achieved things that O'Neill has yet. Finished top 6 3 years in a row. Emery's only got us to 7th. I say only got us to 7th. Like the competitiveness of the league is different. O'Neill got us to a cup final. Emery's not done that yet. We've not even got past the first knockout stage of a cup game under Emery yet. Yeah. So in theory, on paper, O'Neill achieved more than Emery has. Enthusiasm that I have towards Emery versus O'Neill, and again, the O'Neill thing was 15 odd years ago, so I was much younger then and would obviously feel differently about it. I never had, like, when you talk about the matches specifically, we were good on the counter, weren't we? We had pace. We had people like Ashley Young and Gabby, and Carew was a nice footballer, and they should have certainly done more. But we never had that, like, the same feeling of control in matches that I feel now under Emery. Like, we play in a totally different way. Like, I don't really remember us. And there will be moments, of course, because O'Neill was there for 4 seasons. But I don't really remember moments where we like dominated a side like we have done to Brighton this year, West Ham this year, and countless other games where we've been by far the better team and scored 3 or 4 goals. Like that will have happened under O'Neill, of course, and I can't think of any off the top of my head. But generally, I just feel that Emery's philosophy, I guess, for want of a better word, is much more of a rounded, complete thing than what O'Neill had, despite O'Neill achieving more than Emery has so far, if that's fair. Yeah, and I think going back to the point you mentioned there early, Dan, about like Luiz scoring 6 games, Watkins maybe getting 20 goals this season, all of those things, you are right, mean kind of nothing. But what it does prove is that Villa are on the right track to achieving something. Yeah, of course. And seriously, I never thought we'd, I say never, but I had no idea when Villa were going to get in Europe. It could have been 10 years down the line, thinking back 12 months, because we all know V Sports wanted it within 5, and that was kind of like a big ambitious plan, and we've done it kind of just about. But I never had that feeling of, that I'm going to see a Villa team that are going to compete in Europe, which hopefully they do, and I think they can. And that they'd be able to win, cups and silverware, and as you say, we've really have failed on that front at the moment. Yeah. But yeah, if there aren't many fan bases like ours, but if there is one that have kind of struggled and kind of had the life sucked out of us in the last, however long, I shouldn't be sitting here thinking that, we'll win trophies, we'll hopefully get Champions League football in a couple of years, if not next year or whatever. I shouldn't feel like that, but I do, because of Emery and the rate in which we've progressed and the way he's transformed the club. And that's what it's done. It's literally breathed life into the fan base, into the club. And yeah, you just hope that with all of that, it comes together and that we can win things and that we can have a dominant era, because that's what Emery wants. And that's why he's here. He's not, he said before that, he'll take time to go through tactics, to go through games, but he's so impatient for success. And that's exactly what he wants to deliver. And Villa are giving him all the tools to do it. You just hope it comes together. And yeah, what a first year it's been. Yeah, something I said last year, and I've said for a long time now, is that, when we did our end of season predictions towards the back end of the year, like how Villa get into Europe, and we were talking about Anfield away and whatever. And I said then, like, we might not necessarily beat Liverpool, but Emery's given me the belief that we can beat anybody. And that is something that's followed on to this season as well, that you talk about Man City and Arsenal coming up in a few weeks, and 2-3 seasons ago under Dean Smith, who I'll mention very quickly in a second, you'd have gone, we've got no chance against them, have we? Like they're way better than us, or whatever. And they still are, on paper, miles ahead of us, particularly Man City. But I wouldn't now go into that game thinking, Villa have got no chance here. I don't feel that way under Unai Emery in any game against any opposition. I will think, well, we can win today against absolutely anybody. And that's such a great feeling to have as a fan and as a match-going fan at Villa Park, at least. I travel to Villa Park every single week thinking, I don't really care who we're playing today. I don't know what the teams is. I don't really care who they're playing. We're good enough to be able to put on a show against anybody. And if we're on song, we can beat anybody. And as a football fan, there's no better feeling than that belief in your football club. Just want to mention Dean Smith very quickly, that again, for people of our generation, you've got O'Neill, Smith, and now Emery as like the three best managers of the last 20 years, probably 15 years. And Dean Smith being there on Sunday and interviewing Emery for Sky before, we mentioned it on Sunday's post-match show, but it was like the ex-girlfriend and the current girlfriend like meeting in this weird situation. But to many, I've thought about it with hindsight, Emery is fast becoming my favourite Villa manager, and having only been here for 1 year is pretty mad, really. And he's not won anything and whatever else. Before that, Dean Smith is like my favourite manager. Despite O'Neill, we had some good times under him. The Dean Smith era and what came with it, and manager as captain and the Luke Roper shirts and the fairy tale promotion and whatever. Like that period of time in my life with Dean Smith as manager of Aston Villa, I was like, he's like the guy, like he's one of us and whatever. Seeing like the predecessor and the current manager together was like the favourite manager and the one who's actually very good at being a manager or a head coach, like being together. We've been on such a wild journey in the last 5 years and the last 3 years since promotion and the last 1 year under Emery, that it does feel like, and we've said a few times, that this club is geared up towards success. And I do feel like if we don't win something under Unai Emery, what hope have we got, really? Because if he can't do it with this group of players, we might as well pack it in and go home.
Yeah. I think you're probably about right. But again, it's that trust and belief that we'll get there, and I have every faith that fully believe what Emery's put in place and that we trust him. He's got we've been through it before. He's got the track record, and in the current day, what he's doing is sensational. And yeah, as we mentioned earlier, Dean Smith laid these foundations, and I said at the time in which Emery was appointed, when we spoke to Guillaume Balaguer and did podcasts about Emery, Villa are a club that needs a figure like Dean Smith, like Emery, someone that demands respect on and off the pitch and is bloody good at the job as well. Dean Smith in a different way in terms of he's an expert in the Championship. He gets us promoted. And I think sometimes it also gets kind of underrated the success he had actually in the first 2 seasons that we had back in the Premier League. The first season was so difficult in terms of players being sold or going back out on loan. Leaving the club, going back to the parent clubs, then we're having to buy 11 players for about 11 million quid on an average spend. That's peanuts in the Premier League. So the fact that we stayed up, I think, is remarkable. And in the second season, he gets the best out of Jack Grealish, and we finish in our highest league position for X amount of years and whatever. But now Emery's taken it on another level, and we needed that elite manager to get us into the elite bracket of the Premier League and hopefully into Europe in the coming years. So yeah, first year, big tick. And what's exciting is that we're sitting here in 12 months' time. I don't want to limit what we can achieve in that period. Hopefully, there's a trophy in there, and who knows, maybe Champions League football as well. But yeah, we'll see. Emery's here for a long time, I hope, and plenty of time to achieve his goals.
That's enough for this show, John. We've rambled on various different topics today, looking back at Wolves, looking ahead to AZ Alkmaar, and looking back retrospectively at 1 year of Unai Emery. Before we end the show, I'm going to jump back to a piece that I recorded with Matt Kendrick on Sunday in the section that is still unnamed, because I didn't really vibe with any of the suggestions in the comments of, here's something I saw this week and want to share, I want to talk about, or whatever I've decided with. Right, Matt, very random. Obviously, the rest of this podcast has been me and John, but in the section of, here's something I saw this week and wanted to talk about, still not been named by something proper, so let's just go with it. I went to my fiance's granddad's house over the weekend, and he pulled this out from upstairs. It's a football sticker book from the Daily Star from 1980. We worked it out in the end. The book cost 20p and the stickers were a penny, apparently. It's a complete book. of whoever was in the first division at the time. I've got Newcastle and Chelsea. You've got Wolves here. There's Andy Gray. The Villa one, I've got a problem with it, and I raised it with him. I shouldn't really admit this, but he's an Albion fan. So what does he know about football? But he was adamant that this wasn't a mistake, but I am. And I've not spoken about this to anyone, and my dad will clear it up, and I think you will as well. But here's the Villa page. I'm convinced, and I know for a fact, in fact, that is not Des Bremner top left.
It's Gordon Cowans next to Gordon Cowans, isn't he?
Exactly. He's wearing the same shirt, which I know they wore shirts for multiple seasons, and he very clearly looks different. He's got a different haircut. But I was like, that's not Des Bremner. That's Sid Cowans. Where's the Des Bremner sticker? And why is the two Gordon Cowan stickers for maybe different eras, but he's in the same shirt? I was very confused. But this is the year that we won the league, where you've got the honours in the middle. There's no mention of the European Cup, because obviously we hadn't won it yet. You've got Division 1 champions, and the most recent time we'd won it was 1909 to 10. On the right-hand side, you've got like a profile of each player, their position, where they joined from, when they joined Villa. And randomly, something that you don't see these days, height and weight. I suppose you see height sometimes, but you've got like Gordon Cowans, height 5'8", weight 9 stone 2. I just thought it was interesting. Some of these players on here that were obviously Aston Villa royalty, aren't they? It's just a really nice thing I wanted to share with people that are watching, that this 43-year-old sticker book is still intact and still complete. So if someone wants to make an offer to my partner granddad, let me know.
It looks like somebody's asked Gary Shaw a really, really difficult question that he can't quite fathom.
Yeah, the pictures aren't the most flattering, are they, when these were done? Something I wanted to talk about this week. There's the segment. There is an address on the back where you like send off any duplicates. So I send them a letter and say, you owe me a Des Bremner sticker. See if they still make them.
Somebody might get sacked on the back of that.
That'll do us, Matt. Thank you very much for joining us very quickly at the end of this Tuesday show. Thanks to John from earlier for jumping on as well. This is the outro for that show that we recorded on Sunday night, that this is coming out Tuesday. So you and me are both all over the place. But thank you for watching this piece of content on Claret and Blue or listening on Spotify. We'll be back on Thursday for the Europa Conference League game against AZ Alkmaar. So we'll see you all then.